Uh, it's important to remember that yoga, as it's practiced in America right now, is in an incredibly dynamic place. The way that it was practiced 100 years ago bears very little resemblance to how we are currently practicing it, and some of the chief innovators in yoga are in Los Angeles particularly, but in the United States and in Europe. There are different styles of yoga that appeal to me at different times. When I first started practicing asana, I was initially instructed by people in the Iyengar tradition. That was very good from an alignment standpoint. It's not so juicy from my experience in terms of the singing and dancing part of things. I think people who are attracted to Iyengar tend to be people who are more jnana yogis. And that's one way of approaching it. The alignment aspect of Iyengar yoga seems to have found an expression now in the Anusara yoga movement, which introduces much more movement and a different kind of heart awareness to it. In particular, the Anusara movement has been very supportive of kirtan. That's partly because John Friend lived in the same ashram that I did, in Guru Mai's ashram in Ganeshpuri, which is where I met him in 1990. So he is operating from a principle, from a basic yogic understanding that the purpose of this is to expand our heart and our heart's awareness. So he's brought that into the style of yoga that he's teaching. I've practiced Ashtanga. Ashtangis love to chant, so I'm around Ashtangis a lot. People who practice Jivamukti yoga chant a lot. The Kundalini movement has its own chant tradition, and I find that practicing Kundalini yoga and Anusara yoga together for me seems to kind of form a complete meal. I'm interested right now in exploring some of the Sikh mantras. Gurmukh recently basically told me that I should just start checking them out. And I'd been reluctant to do that just because that wasn't the tradition that I was initiated in, and so I felt a little bit like I needed somebody's permission or command. I'd played for Yogi Bhajan a few times back in the 90s, but had always kind of kept a little bit of a distance from that, although I love going to Kundalini classes. So I think in the future I may make a CD of Kundalini mantras, because they're powerful and they take me the same place that, that the Hindu mantras do. And also, I'm not identified as a Hindu. In terms of what I can be said to believe, my own sense of the world owes as much to Buddhism or Taoism as Hinduism. I don't know that that's particularly important in terms of what I'm facilitating. I speak as a matter of course in my concerts, but that's mostly a matter of engaging the audience and trying to answer some questions. There's things to contemplate. It's been a way for me to process my own stuff. The funny thing about being a person in process with yoga is that I'm in front of a crowd when I'm on tour 5 nights a week. So my spiritual process has, of necessity, had to be public, not private, which is a little weird because sometimes I'm in a certain place and I'm going to say something and a year later my understanding may be different. I know that the chant always shifts my vibe. At the beginning of the kirtan, I might not be in a great place, but I know that I can use the kirtan to move myself along. So the process of touring and singing has itself been a kind of yoga. And I've had to confront everything about myself. I've had to relinquish almost everything. On the one hand, this thing that I do is incredibly joyful. On the other hand, the whole business of traveling and singing is sometimes very difficult, and somehow I've had to embrace both of those experiences in my being and shed some light.